Future Report. Burning Earth, Dying Sun. By Trent Holloway. February 18th, 2025. Chapter 1. Dossier of Doom. Looking back from the future. If we could see our progress from the perspective of a distant tomorrow, would we change our habits? Would we be able to correct the damage made to life on the planet? That is what this book sets out to do. A glimpse of the future and an ultimate conclusion if the current problems are left unchecked and unchanged. Heat dome. The term has been around for several decades, but it was only used among climatologists. A heat dome is a weather phenomenon characterized by a dome-like area of high atmospheric pressure that traps and concentrates hot and stagnant air beneath it. This atmospheric condition leads to prolonged periods of extremely high temperatures, often causing heat waves in the affected region. The heat dome acts as a lid, preventing the hot air from rising and dissipating, which can result in dangerous and potentially record-breaking temperatures. The heat dome can cover a small or a wide area. There are local heat domes that can cause a heat wave in a small city or area. Regional heat domes can cover a whole state, or even continental-scale heat domes that can span across a large portion of a given continent. For example, the heat wave in the Pacific Northwest of the United States and Canada in late June 2021 was caused by a massive heat dome that covered most of the Pacific Northwest of the United States, where populations experienced a significant and unprecedented heat wave. This heat dome covered a vast area that included parts of the United States and Canada. Similarly, in 2010, a notable heatwave in Russia was also attributed to a large heat dome that covered a substantial portion of the country. In cities like Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington, temperatures reached levels that were much higher than had ever been recorded in the past. In Portland, temperatures exceeded 110 degrees Fahrenheit, and in Seattle, they reached around 108 degrees Fahrenheit. These temperatures were substantially higher than the usual summertime highs, which are usually within the range of the mid-70s to low 80s degree F for both cities. That is just a glimpse of 1 year. In June 2023 in India, where air conditioning is not common because it is expensive to buy and run, 166 people died from heat-related illnesses in the states of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. According to the Associated Press, morgues were full as temperatures hovered around 113 degrees Fahrenheit, far above the normal temperatures for that time of year. So many people are dying from the heat that we are not getting a minute's time to rest. On Sunday, I carried 26 dead bodies. Jitendra Kumar Yadav, a hearse driver in Deoria town, 110 kilometers, about 70 miles, from Bolia, told the Associated Press. These temperatures are so high that even when night falls, there is no relief from the heat. And the temperatures of the Earth are only expected to continue to increase over the years to come. Most estimates point to the end of the 21st century as a time of reckoning, a breaking point where the global temperature rises to such an extreme that life on this planet will have to adapt or perish. 3 degrees warmer. There is a temperature and a timeline when current weather models predict a turning point in Earth's climate. 3 degrees Celsius. That is how much the Earth will warm by the end of the century. That doesn't sound like a lot. But for when people like myself living in the US look at the temperature in Fahrenheit, the number is very frightening. That is nearly 40 degrees hotter than the average global temperature that we have all taken for granted all of our lives. 37.4 degrees Fahrenheit is the exact number. That kind of overall global temperature will make sea levels rise and coastal cities flood due to melting polar ice, forcing 4 million people to move away from their homes in the United States alone. Unheard of superstorms will become common. And coral reefs will die off, causing a mass extinction of species and loss of jobs and food along the coasts. This will then make the oceans more acidic, wiping out the shellfish industry. Oceans absorb about a third of the carbon dioxide emitted into the air, and increased acidic levels from the lack of coral reefs would shut down this process, causing global temperatures to increase even more. That increased global heat of nearly 40 degrees Fahrenheit won't go down, it will continue to rise. The world that humans live in will be forever altered. Food and water will become scarce, and escaping the unrelenting heat will be nearly impossible. Living in this kind of hellscape will not be easy. There will be mass die-offs of both people and animals. Currently, we are in a mass extinction event. That means that 75%, a third of the planet's species, are dying off. This has happened before. 5 times to be exact. The reasons vary, but the outcome is the same. Only a few survive. The World Wildlife Fund in 2023 announced that the planet is in a 6th mass extinction event, where the wildlife of the planet is running out of places to live. In a 10-year period, between 2010 and 2019, 160 species have gone extinct according to the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. And it's not just animals that are affected, plants are dying off as well. Nearly 600 plants have gone extinct in the last 250 years, but the actual number is believed to be much higher. These die-offs are blamed on climate change and the ever-increasing human population. So where is all of this headed, and what is the future of a world that continues to turn up the heat? Chapter 2. Monday, July 12th. 2105, Phoenix, Arizona. In the sweltering heart of Phoenix, Arizona, Lucas Rivera woke up to another blistering morning. At 25 years old, he had grown accustomed to the relentless heat that had gripped the city for years. His small apartment offered little respite, its air conditioning struggling against the oppressive temperatures. Lucas rose from his sweat-soaked sheets and stepped into a cool shower, a brief moment of relief before the day's trials. Lucas worked as a maintenance technician at a local supermarket, a job that now seemed like a daily battle against the elements. The store's refrigeration system struggled to keep perishables from spoiling in the heat. Lucas and his colleagues had become experts at makeshift repairs, their overworked tools a testament to the unending challenge. He kissed his wife, Sophia, as she left for her own job as a nurse at the overcrowded local hospital. They worried constantly about their 2 young children, Maya and Liam. The scorching days were bad enough, but the nights brought little relief as the temperature rarely dropped. Lucas and Sophia took turns monitoring their children's fitful sleep, using wet cloths and portable fans to ease their discomfort. The city was a battleground against nature. The once thriving parks had withered into arid wastelands, and even the hardiest of desert plants struggled to survive. Water had become a precious commodity, rationed to households in meager quantities. Lucas and his neighbors often shared tips on how to make the most of every drop, collecting rainwater and using it sparingly for cooking and cleaning. Despite the dire circumstances, Lucas found moments of solace in the small community that had formed among the survivors. They traded stories of their daily struggles, shared food and supplies, and offered support when one of their own succumbed to the heat. The morgues were indeed full, a grim reminder of the city's battle for survival. Lucas's workdays were grueling, but they provided a sense of purpose. He patched up refrigerators, restocked shelves, and helped customers navigate the limited supplies. Each evening, he returned to his family with whatever scraps of food he could find. The store's produce section was a shadow of its former self, and many staples were long gone from the shelves. As the global temperature climbed 2 degrees Celsius higher than it had been in 2023, Lucas and his family faced an uncertain future. The challenge wasn't just surviving the heat dome, it was finding ways to thrive within it. Lucas dreamed of a cooler place, a safer haven where Maya and Liam could grow up without fear of the sun's relentless wrath. Yet, in the midst of the adversity, Lucas held on to hope. Hope that one day, they would find a way to adapt, to reclaim their city from the grip of the heat dome. He looked at his family's tired but determined faces and knew that they were fighters, resilient against the odds. And in their fight for survival, they found strength in each other and a shared determination to weather the storm, no matter how scorching it became. The heat dome's grip. The world was sweltering under an unrelenting embrace, the grip of the heat domes. As our planet's climate continued its tumultuous dance with human activity, the consequences of our choices had crystallized into these oppressive phenomena. Heat domes, once sporadic events, had evolved into relentless patterns of extreme temperatures, challenging the very fabric of life as we knew it. Within these heat domes, the atmosphere became a pressure cooker, locking in heat and roasting entire regions. The science behind this phenomenon was intricate, a web of interactions between warming oceans, shifting jet streams, and altered atmospheric circulation. As greenhouse gases accumulated in the atmosphere, their heat-trapping effect intensified, giving rise to increasingly frequent and severe heat waves. In cities around the world, heat waves were no longer occasional nuisances. They had become life-threatening events. The elderly and vulnerable succumbed to heat-related illnesses, and urban infrastructure strained against the demand for cooling. Pavements radiated heat like embers, and air conditioning systems whirred incessantly, trying to ward off the stifling atmosphere. A disturbing synergy emerged between heat waves and droughts. The relentless heat accelerated evaporation, draining water bodies and parching the earth. Rivers that once flowed with life dwindled to a trickle, and lakes turned into cracked beds of mud. Agriculture faltered as crops wilted in the fields, a grim reminder of the interconnectedness of ecosystems. The world faced the stark reality of food scarcity and the social unrest it spawned. Climate scientists warned that we had entered a dangerous phase, the realm of tipping points. Irreversible shifts in the Earth's systems were being triggered, where even drastic measures to reduce emissions would only slow down the inevitable. The glaciers that crown majestic mountains were receding at an alarming rate, adding to the growing volume of rising seas that threatened coastal cities. The signs were there, etched in the very ice cores that held the record of our planet's history. The daunting truth loomed. The clock was ticking. Our actions, or lack thereof, had brought us to a crossroads where the choices we made today would define our survival tomorrow. The heat domes were not mere weather anomalies. They were a testament to the intricate dance between human decisions and environmental consequences. The evidence was before us. Data from decades of monitoring, climate models that echoed the grim trends, and the undeniable experiences of those who lived through the scorching nights and blistering days. Chapter 3. Fires. In the previous chapter, the life of Lucas Rivera in the year 2105 seems bleak, but according to current estimates, it is a scenario that is closer to our own times than we may want to believe. In 2023, the Canadian wildfires brought an unprecedented amount of devastation combined with heat and pollution to the northeastern United States. These factors contribute to causing and maintaining heat domes. Wildfires in the western U.S. and Canada are nothing new, but over the past decade, both have climbed in numbers that have never been seen before. In Canada, the number of acres burned in July reached 23 million, roughly the size of North Carolina, according to CNBC. The average is around 5.4 million acres, which is nearly the size of Massachusetts. According to the EPA, parts of the West and Southwest show the largest increase in burned acreage between 1984 to 2020. Acreage burned in the West has increased noticeably in nearly every month of the year. The peak of the U.S. wildfire season is occurring earlier. Fires used to peak in August. But more recently, it peaks in July. On average, 1.7 million acres burned in July of each year from 2002 to 2020. This incremental rise shows no signs of stopping. It will continue to rise, and this is partly what feeds heat domes, along with droughts, increased snowmelts, and an overall glowing global temperature. the recipe for a scenario for Lucas Rivera is closer than we think. Put simply, a heat dome is a weather pattern that traps scorching air under a high-pressure system. While heat waves are not a new occurrence, the rapid intensification and frequency of heat domes can be attributed to the changing climate. As global temperatures rise, the conditions that give rise to heat domes become more favorable. The heat dome not only exacerbates extreme temperatures, but also interacts synergistically with other climatic elements, perpetuating a vicious cycle. Drought, one of the key players in this interplay, emerges as a driving force behind the intensification of heat domes. A prolonged lack of precipitation not only parches the land, but also leaves behind arid conditions ripe for ignition. In this tinderbox landscape, wildfires thrive, igniting with increased frequency and ferocity. These fires, in turn, release vast amounts of heat energy into the atmosphere, creating a self-perpetuating cycle where fires beget more fires, further contributing to the heat dome's strength. The connection between wildfires and heat domes is a prime example of a feedback loop that spells catastrophe for both the environment and human societies. As these fires raise forests, their particulate-laden plumes cast a dark shadow on the sun's rays, potentially cooling some regions. However, these aerosols, as they settle back to Earth, can warm the surface and exacerbate the heat dome's effects in other ways. Drought, a common accomplice of heat domes and wildfires, amplifies the conundrum. The same conditions that favor the formation of heat domes often suppress the formation of rain clouds. With precipitation becoming scarce, communities battle not only the oppressive heat, but also the dwindling water supply. Crop failures, food shortages, and strained water resources will become the new norm. Chapter 4. Tuesday evening, July 13th. 21:05, Phoenix, Arizona. As the relentless heat wave continued to grip Phoenix, Lucas couldn't help but worry about his grandfather, Eduardo. The old man had always been a symbol of resilience in his life, having faced hardships that seemed unimaginable. Despite living without modern luxuries like electricity, Eduardo had managed to carve out a life of contentment in the arid landscape. Lucas had made it a point to visit his grandfather regularly, checking on him to ensure he was safe from the scorching temperatures. Eduardo usually sought refuge in the heat shelters that had been set up across the city, but today was different. Lucas had a nagging feeling that something was off. As the sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the cracked streets, Lucas made his way to Eduardo's small adobe house. The air felt thick with heat, and even the slight breeze offered little relief. He knocked on the door, hoping to hear his grandfather's familiar voice, but there was no response. Concern growing, Lucas pushed open the door and entered. The interior of the house was dimly lit, the only illumination filtering through the openings in the weathered walls. Eduardo sat in a worn armchair, his face pale and covered in a sheen of sweat. He appeared weak, breathing shallowly as if each inhale required a monumental effort. "Abuelo," Lucas called, rushing to his grandfather's side. The old man's eyes fluttered open, and he managed a faint smile. "Lucas, mi hijo," Eduardo rasped, his voice barely audible. I didn't want to trouble anyone. I thought I could bear the heat." Lucas's heart ached at the sight of his grandfather's frailty. He helped Eduardo to his feet, the old man leaning heavily on his grandson for support. As they emerged from the stifling interior of the house, the intense sunlight hit them like a physical force. Lucas guided his grandfather to his car, carefully settling him in the passenger seat. The drive to the hospital was a blur of anxiety and tension. Lucas's mind raced, alternating between worry for Eduardo and anger at the unrelenting heat that had brought his family to this breaking point. He glanced at his grandfather, who stared out the window, his expression a mix of weariness and acceptance. At the hospital, the staff sprang into action, recognizing the severity of Eduardo's condition. Sophia, Lucas's wife, was on duty, and she rushed to join the team attending to Eduardo. The emergency room was a flurry of activity as they worked to lower Eduardo's body temperature and stabilize his weakened state. Lucas stood by, feeling helpless as his grandfather was hooked up to various monitors and machines. Sophia's brow furrowed with concern, and she exchanged worried glances with her husband. The medical staff worked tirelessly, administering cooling measures to combat the effects of heatstroke. As the hours stretched on, it became clear that Eduardo's condition was dire. The heat had taken a heavy toll on his elderly body, and despite the efforts of the medical team, his vital signs remained unstable. Sophia approached Lucas, her eyes glistening with tears. "It's not looking good," she whispered, her voice heavy with sorrow. "We're doing everything we can, but his body is struggling to recover." Lucas nodded, his throat tight with emotion. He held Eduardo's hand, his grip a mix of comfort and desperation. Memories of his grandfather's stories, his wisdom and resilience, flooded Lucas's mind. He couldn't bear the thought of losing him. As the night deepened, the hospital room remained a battleground between Eduardo's tenacious spirit and the relentless heat. Despite their best efforts, the medical staff had to deliver the devastating news that Eduardo's body couldn't overcome the strain. Lucas held his grandfather's hand as Eduardo's breathing grew shallower, his life force slipping away. In the quiet moments that followed, as Lucas grieved the loss of his grandfather, he couldn't help but reflect on the cycle of life and the legacy Eduardo left behind. He thought of the stories Eduardo had shared, the lessons learned from a life of hardship, and the strength he had instilled in Lucas. Eduardo's passing served as a stark reminder of the urgency to confront the challenges posed by the heat dome. His death was a testament to the harsh reality of their world, where even the strongest spirits could be broken by the unrelenting climate. Lucas returned home with a heavy heart, the weight of grief mingling with the determination to honor his grandfather's memory. He shared the news with Sophia and held his children close, realizing that the fight for survival was not only for themselves, but for the generations that would come after. As they sat in the dimly lit living room, the air conditioner humming weakly, Lucas looked at his family's tired faces. What could he tell them? Was he going to say that things were going to get better? The temperatures were only rising every year. What could he say to ease their sorrow? Chapter 5. Water. Lucas's grandfather lost the ability to sweat because of something called the wet bulb temperature. It's the biggest problem for a high-heat future. For instance, a wet bulb temperature of around 80 degrees Fahrenheit 27 degrees Celsius can challenge the body's cooling mechanisms, especially when humidity is high. When the wet bulb temperature is extremely elevated, the air may already be saturated with moisture, hindering effective sweat evaporation. This impairs the body's cooling efficiency, potentially causing heat-related illnesses, even heat stroke. To measure the wet bulb temperature, a thermometer bulb is wrapped in a damp cloth. As air crosses the wet surface, some moisture evaporates, leading to a drop in temperature. This temperature drop is linked to the cooling effect of evaporation, offering insight into how efficiently air can cool through this process. The wet bulb temperature takes into account not only the heat, but also the humidity and the cooling effect of moisture evaporation. So, the wet bulb temperature gives you an idea of how it really feels when both the heat and humidity are considered together. When the humidity is low, the wet bulb temperature is closer to what is called a dry bulb temperature. But when it's really humid, the wet bulb temperature can be much lower than the dry bulb temperature because the air is already holding a lot of moisture and can't take in more. The problem comes when the wet bulb temperature gets too high. It means the air is so humid that even your sweat can't evaporate properly, making it hard for your body to cool down. Eventually, this can lead to heat stroke and death. In places like Phoenix, where the climate is already very hot and dry, losing the ability to sweat means a near-instant death, and as those living in a world filled with ever-growing levels of unescapable heat, struggling to find a way to adapt in an ever harsher environment will become nearly impossible. In 2022, Arizona's Maricopa County reported a staggering 25% increase in heat-related deaths compared to the previous year. Heat waves have escalated in intensity and frequency across 50 U.S. cities since the 1960s, resulting in dire consequences for vulnerable populations. In recent years, even temperate areas like the Pacific Northwest have witnessed heat-related deaths in significant numbers. As temperatures continue to rise, experts highlight the link between extreme heat and overall increased mortality rates. For regions like Arizona and Texas, accustomed to enduring heat waves, emergency departments have developed strategies to manage the sporadic influx of heat stroke cases. However, prolonged periods of high temperatures combined with power outages can transform extreme heat into a mass casualty event, overwhelming emergency care facilities. Vulnerability to heat-related illnesses is widespread, affecting infants, elderly individuals, those with chronic diseases, pregnant women, and people with limited access to cooling systems. Moreover, the impact of extreme heat can be worse for marginalized communities because air conditioning can be too expensive to run. Large cities are often called urban heat islands because of the increased heat given from concrete, asphalt, and tight urban spaces. They are hotter than rural areas and can be deadly in the summer months. The loss of water. There will be less water in the air because water from lakes and seas is drying up as well. The world's largest lakes are shrinking every year. More than half of the world's major lakes and reservoirs have lost vast amounts of water in the past 30 years. Droughts, water use, climate change, put whatever label you wish on the problem, but the loss of fresh water persists. The future of this continued loss of fresh water means that large populations, agriculture, and ecosystems will be severely impacted. A quarter of the global population lives near these shrinking lakes, which hold 90% of the planet's liquid surface freshwater. There are 3 lakes in the United States that are on the verge of disappearing. Utah's Great Salt Lake, the largest saltwater lake in the Western Hemisphere, has lost 73% of its water and has reached historic lows. It could disappear by 2033. Colorado's Lake Mead, the largest man-made reservoir in the U.S., is experiencing rapidly declining water levels due to severe drought and water shortages. It could be gone within a few years, leading to a major water crisis in the American Southwest. Lake Powell, another Colorado River reservoir, might dry up in a few years. Its water levels have hit historic lows, and if the current rate of decline continues, it will be gone. In 2022, parts of the Mississippi River dried up from a severe drought. Plaquemines Parish, south of New Orleans, experienced saltwater intrusion into its drinking water supply due to the slow flow of the river caused by the low water levels. This posed health risks to residents, particularly those with chronic health issues. The drought impacted transportation as barge traffic is disrupted, and ships were stuck in sand and mud along the river. Freshwater drying up isn't the only problem. Excessive heat and pollution in the form of runoff into freshwater caused the formation of highly toxic algae blooms. In August of 2014, an algae bloom on Lake Erie was so bad that residents of Toledo were told not to drink the water, cook, or brush their teeth with it. Their tap water was now a toxic poisonous soup. 400,000 residents were affected. The crisis lasted for 3 full days as residents were forced to find water in grocery stores, and when those supplies quickly vanished, many drove to faraway counties to stock up on much-needed water. Water disappearing and becoming undrinkable are all results of escalating temperatures. These temperatures will continue to rise. Some have even argued that even if we did make changes now to prevent climate change, we have unfortunately moved beyond the tipping point and are now sliding down where there is no turning back. Has the damage already been done? Chapter 6. 2123. The Awful Heat. In the year 2123, the world had become an oven, a relentless furnace where the sun's scorching embrace never relented. The predictions of scientists, once dismissed as distant warnings, had materialized into a brutal reality. Heat waves swept across continents like infernal tempests, leaving devastation in their wake. Streets that once bustled with life now stood deserted, a testament to the intensity of the heat. Pavements radiated a searing heat, making them impossible to touch without protective gear. People ventured outside only when absolutely necessary, their bodies swathed in heat-resistant garments, their faces hidden behind visors that shielded them from the searing rays. In what were once fertile fields, crops now withered under the oppressive sun. The land, once a source of sustenance, had transformed into a barren wasteland. Fields that used to rustle with the melody of waving crops now stood silent, their desolation echoing the cries of farmers who struggled against insurmountable odds. Irrigation systems, once a lifeline for agriculture, lay dry and useless as water sources dwindled. In the heart of cities, once thriving parks had transformed into desolate expanses, the lush greenery reduced to a memory. The air hung heavy with an acrid scent as smog clung to the skyline, a result of desperate attempts to create shade and cool down urban areas. Power grids strained to meet the demands of relentless air conditioning systems, pushing electrical networks to the brink of collapse. As desperation grew, so did the migration to the subterranean havens that had been hastily constructed beneath cities. Massive underground complexes provided refuge from the unforgiving heat, offering a sanctuary where temperatures remained relatively stable. People packed their belongings and descended into the depths, leaving behind the surface that had become an inhospitable battleground. Life below ground was a surreal juxtaposition of technological advancement and the grim reality above. Underground farms, illuminated by artificial lights, were the new source of sustenance. The hum of machinery and the steady rhythm of life reverberated through the tunnels. Yet, even in this engineered sanctuary, there was no escaping the psychological toll, the yearning for the sun's warmth, the memories of a world that was, and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Amidst the struggle, a prevailing sense of unity emerged. People, thrust into a shared ordeal, found solace in their collective resilience. New bonds formed as communities worked together to make the underground cities not just a place of survival, but a place of life. The ingenuity of humanity shone through as technologies were repurposed and innovative solutions were born out of necessity. Above ground, remnants of the past stood as silent witnesses to a world forever changed. Monuments to a time when humanity had pushed the limits of the planet without considering the consequences. The land, scarred and scorched, was a stark reminder that the world could no longer be taken for granted. In the flickering light of underground habitats, people whispered stories of what once was, of oceans kissed by gentle breezes, of mountains that touched the sky, of a world where the sun was a friend rather than a relentless foe. And as they gazed upon the dimly lit gardens that defied the darkness, hope blossomed, hope that through unity, innovation, and determination, humanity might yet find a way to reclaim the surface, to mend the wounds inflicted upon the earth, and to forge a new future amidst the ruins of the old. Chapter 7. 2171. Beneath the scorching skies. Moving underground. In the year 2171, Earth's surface had become an inhospitable realm, scorched by the unrelenting heat of the greenhouse effect. As the temperatures soared to unbearable levels, humanity found refuge below ground, in sprawling underground cities built to protect against the searing sun. Amidst this new reality, we follow the journey of Maya, a young woman who has grown up in one such underground city named Haven. Maya's generation knew nothing of the world above. The stories of blue skies and open spaces were relics of the past. For them, life was confined to the sprawling subterranean metropolis, where artificial lights mimicked the sun's warmth and where families forged lives beneath the Earth's surface. Maya's everyday life revolved around survival and adaptation. Water was a precious resource sourced from a newly discovered underground aquifer. A complex system of pumps and filtration units provided the city's inhabitants with the life-giving liquid. Maya vividly remembered stories her grandparents had shared about rain and rivers, but the only water she knew came from the depths below. Food was another challenge. In Haven, agriculture was a carefully orchestrated endeavor. Hydroponic farms sprawled across vast chambers, their artificial light fostering the growth of crops in the absence of sunlight. Maya had learned to tend to these crops from a young age, nurturing rows of leafy greens and crops that sustained the city's population. Every leaf was a triumph against the oppressive conditions above. Maya's routine consisted of tending to the crops, monitoring the water supply, and connecting with her friends and family within the underground network. The world above was an enigma, a hostile and distant realm that held little relevance to her daily life. But that was about to change. One day, a series of tremors rocked Haven, unsettling its residents. As panic spread, Maya's curiosity led her to delve into the city's history archives. There, she stumbled upon documents detailing the creation of the underground cities, a desperate response to the deteriorating environment above. The tremors were a consequence of instability caused by excessive resource extraction. Driven by a newfound determination, Maya sought out the city's leaders, armed with the knowledge she had uncovered. She proposed a radical idea to explore the feasibility of reclaiming the surface. With the help of fellow visionaries, Maya advocated for the development of technologies to cool the Earth's surface and restore its balance. As the movement gained momentum, Maya's perseverance and leadership qualities propelled her into a position of influence. The city united behind her cause, pouring resources into research and innovation. Engineers devised systems to lower surface temperatures, while biologists experimented with crops that could thrive in the modified climate. Years passed, and Maya's dream began to materialize. Surface temperatures slowly dropped, and reports from scouts who ventured above indicated that the world was recovering. The city's inhabitants, once resigned to life underground, now dreamed of returning to the surface, a place of open skies and natural beauty. Maya's legacy was solidified as she witnessed the first rays of sunlight to touch the surface in decades. The underground city, once a symbol of escape, was now a testament to human resilience and the ability to overcome insurmountable odds. Beneath the scorching skies, Maya and her generation had reshaped their destiny. They had not only survived but thrived in the face of adversity, proving that humanity's capacity for adaptation and change could lead to a brighter future, one where the surface, once uninhabitable, was ready to welcome them back. Chapter 8. Real-world plans for moving underground. In the wake of escalating climate crises, the concept of urban living has taken an unprecedented turn below the Earth's surface. As cities grapple with extreme weather events, rising temperatures, and population explosions, the idea of creating underground cities has shifted from science fiction to a plausible solution. The allure of subterranean living lies not only in its potential to combat climate challenges, but also in its ability to redefine the very nature of urban development. Unearthing historical inspiration. The idea of living beneath the Earth's crust is not new. Ancient civilizations, like the people of Cappadocia in modern-day Turkey, created entire underground cities for protection against external threats and extreme weather. Fast forward to the 21st century, and cities around the world are revisiting this concept with a fresh perspective. From Helsinki to Singapore, pioneering the subterranean future. Helsinki, the Finnish capital, has become a trailblazer in the world of underground living. The Underground Master Plan, introduced in 2010, set the stage for a subterranean transformation. Embracing the frigid winters and limited surface space, Helsinki's plan encompasses energy conservation, shelter from harsh weather conditions, and even the construction of an emergency bunker. This concept of reimagining urban infrastructure below ground offers not only protection, but also a solution to the ever-pressing issue of land scarcity. Meanwhile, Singapore, a city-state grappling with limited land resources and a dense population, has embarked on an audacious journey with its deep tunnel sewerage system, DTSS. This intricate underground network is not only a means to treat wastewater, but also a way to conserve water resources and create vital space above ground. The DTSS exemplifies the fusion of ecological responsibility and urban innovation, harnessing the depths of the earth to address modern challenges. Engineering a new era, challenges and triumphs. Creating subterranean cities comes with a unique set of challenges. Chief among them is the human element. Convincing people to embrace life beneath the surface is a psychological hurdle that architects and planners must overcome. Architect Asmo Joksi, responsible for Helsinki's underground Amos Rex Museum, understood this complexity and introduced skylights to provide natural light and a connection to the world above. Incorporating elements that maintain a sense of connection to the surface helps address the psychological aspect of underground living. Another crucial challenge lies in engineering and construction. Building underground requires addressing issues of stability, ventilation, and logistics, as well as developing solutions for energy consumption, temperature regulation, and access to essential resources. However, these challenges have not deterred cities like Singapore from pushing the boundaries of possibility. The subterranean revolution, a glimpse into the future. As urban populations continue to grow and the impacts of climate change become increasingly evident, the shift towards subterranean development gains momentum. While the concept may seem novel, history has demonstrated that humans have the resilience and ingenuity to adapt and thrive even in unconventional habitats. With modern technology, lessons from the past, and a commitment to sustainability, subterranean cities offer a promising alternative for urban growth. The marriage of urban planning and ecological responsibility can redefine what it means to live in harmony with the environment. As we delve deeper into this subterranean revolution, we may find that the future of cities lies not only above the ground, but also beneath it, where innovation and sustainability converge to create a world resilient to the challenges of a changing climate. Chapter 9. 2140. No turning back. Unraveling ecosystems. As the heat domes tighten their grip on the world, ecosystems once teeming with life found themselves locked in a battle for survival. The delicate balance that had evolved over millennia was being disrupted at an unprecedented pace, leaving devastation in its wake. Biodiversity, the tapestry of life that painted Earth's landscapes, was fraying at the edges. Species that had evolved to thrive within specific temperature ranges found themselves pushed beyond their limits. The patterns of migration and breeding that had governed the cycles of life were thrown into disarray. The relentless heat waves had become an unwelcome adversary, driving many species to the brink of extinction. Coral reefs, once vibrant underwater cities, were now skeletal remnants of their former glory. The rising ocean temperatures stressed the intricate relationship between the corals and their symbiotic algae, triggering the phenomenon known as coral bleaching. As the algae departed, the corals turned ghostly white, deprived of both their color and their primary source of sustenance. These bleached reefs were not only a visual testament to the ecological crisis, but also a harbinger of the irreversible damage caused by unchecked climate change. Forests, often referred to as the lungs of the earth, were not spared either. The rising temperatures led to prolonged droughts, weakening trees and making them susceptible to infestations. Insects that thrived in warmer climates found their ranges expanding, decimating entire stands of trees. The once verdant canopies began to thin, leaving behind a panorama of desolation. The interconnected web of life that flourished within these forests was unraveling, threatening countless species that depended on this habitat for their survival. Heat stress, exacerbated by prolonged droughts, ignited infernos across continents. The link between extreme heat and wildfires became all too apparent, transforming once sprawling landscapes into charred wastelands. These fires weren't just isolated incidents, they were the culmination of a cycle where rising temperatures created the perfect conditions for these devastating events. As forests dried and underbrush accumulated, even the smallest spark could set off a cataclysmic chain reaction. The consequences of these ecological disruptions were far-reaching. Biodiversity loss meant that vital ecological services, such as pollination, soil enrichment, and water purification, were compromised. The delicate balance of predator-prey relationships was thrown into chaos, leading to cascading effects throughout ecosystems. Human populations, deeply intertwined with these natural systems, felt the repercussions in myriad ways, from reduced crop yields due to pollination failures to increased vulnerability to natural disasters due to eroded coastal defenses. These grim realities underscored the urgency of understanding and mitigating the impact of heat domes. The unraveling ecosystems were not isolated incidents. They were indicative of the systemic upheaval that climate change was wreaking on the planet. The interconnectedness of Earth's life forms and environmental processes meant that a ripple of change could amplify into a tidal wave of consequences. Chapter 10. Nature's Cry. Amidst the unforgiving landscape, pockets of life clung to existence like flickering flames in the dark. The world had become a place of scarcity, where survival was a daily battle against the elements. The remnants of Earth's once thriving ecosystems now stood as sanctuaries for the last of their kind, their resilience tested by the relentless onslaught of heat and despair. In the depths of a decimated rainforest, a lone jaguar prowled. Its sleek coat, once a symbol of power and grace, had faded, matching the subdued hues of the landscape. It moved with a careful elegance, its eyes scanning the underbrush for any sign of prey. The once abundant wildlife had dwindled to a scarce few, and the jaguar's growling belly was a constant reminder of the changing fortunes of the natural world. Nearby, a group of capuchin monkeys swung through the skeletal remains of trees, their playful antics a stark contrast to the somber backdrop. Their numbers had diminished, and their usual foraging routes had become treacherous journeys through a maze of dried-up waterholes and barren earth. Their calls, once a symphony of life in the forest, now held an edge of urgency, a plea for survival in a world that had grown harsh and unforgiving. Beneath the surface of the ocean, a solitary sea turtle glided through the warming waters. Its ancient eyes, weathered by centuries of witnessing the world's wonders, now held a weight of sadness. Coral reefs, once the bustling cities of the underwater realm, were now silent graveyards, and the turtle's migrations were filled with a longing for the vibrant habitats of its ancestors. It was a world of solitude, where the echoes of past glory reverberated through the emptiness. In the skies, a lone condor soared, its wings casting shadows on a landscape forever changed. The winds that once carried the scents of blooming flowers and dense forests now whispered tales of desolation. The condor's keen eyes spotted a glimpse of movement, a scavenger that had once been a rare sight, now a common opportunist in a world of scarcity. It was a reminder that nature's balance had been disrupted, and the struggle for survival had given rise to unexpected winners and losers. Amidst the struggle, life clung on, showing an unyielding determination to persist. Each creature that braved the odds was a testament to the resilience of Earth's inhabitants. These survivors were not just individuals, they were the custodians of a legacy, the keepers of stories that stretched back eons. Their every step, every flutter of wing, and every ripple in the water was a symphony of nature's cry, a plea for harmony, a plea for balance, a plea for a world that could thrive once more. And as the jaguar stalked its prey, as the capuchin monkeys chattered in the fading light, as the sea turtle continued its ancient migration, and as the condor soared through the heavens, they carried with them the echoes of what had been and the whispers of what could be. Their struggles were a poignant reminder that the fate of the planet rested not just on the shoulders of humanity, but on the intricate tapestry of life that had evolved over millennia. Chapter 11. Melting Ice and Rising Seas. How would sea level change if all glaciers melted? Global sea level would rise approximately 70 meters, approximately 230 feet, flooding every coastal city on the planet. That is according to the USGS in 2023. The Earth's icy fortresses were crumbling, their majestic forms yielding to the relentless assault of rising temperatures. From the Arctic to the Antarctic, glaciers and ice sheets were surrendering their ancient grip on the land, releasing torrents of meltwater into the oceans. This monumental transformation was reshaping the world's coastlines and the lives of millions who called these areas home. In the northern reaches of the planet, the Arctic was undergoing a profound metamorphosis. The sea ice, which once blanketed vast expanses, was receding at an alarming rate. Satellite imagery captured the shrinking ice cap, its expanse dwindling year by year. As the ice retreated, dark ocean waters were exposed, absorbing more heat from the sun and accelerating the rate of warming. This dangerous feedback loop, known as the albedo effect, amplified the impacts of climate change, creating a perilous cycle that was difficult to break. Glaciers, Earth's slow-moving rivers of ice, were retreating in a manner that defied their historical patterns. These frozen giants, that had sculpted landscapes over eons, were now receding at an unprecedented pace. The meltwater cascading from these glaciers flowed into rivers and oceans, contributing to the rising sea levels that threatened coastal communities around the world. Sea level rise, a consequence of melting ice and the thermal expansion of seawater as it warms, had become an undeniable reality. Coastal cities that had thrived for centuries were now facing a perilous future. The data was unequivocal. Since the early 20th century, sea levels had risen by several inches, and the pace was accelerating. The implications were dire: higher tides that inundated coastal neighborhoods, more frequent and devastating storm surges, and the slow but steady erosion of the very land upon which these communities were built. But the greatest specter of all was the potential collapse of the massive ice sheets that crowned Antarctica and Greenland. These frozen behemoths held enough water to raise global sea levels by meters, an existential threat to coastal regions worldwide. As these ice sheets melted from beneath and their edges crumbled into the ocean, the resulting sea level rise could reshape the very map of the world. The process was complex and nuanced. Warm ocean waters flowed beneath the ice shelves, eroding them from within. As these shelves weakened, the glaciers behind them surged towards the sea, their unstoppable descent hastened by the loss of the floating ice that once buttressed them. The speed and scale of this process were staggering, and the implications were profound. A future where coastlines shifted, where island nations vanished beneath the waves, where the world grappled with the reality of forced migration on an unprecedented scale. A newly studied ice core from beneath Greenland's ice sheet reveals that around 400,000 years ago, a significant portion of the country was ice-free during a period of similar temperatures to today. Contrary to prior assumptions, this study indicates that moderate warming led to substantial melting and a sea level rise of over 1.4 meters, 4.6 feet. The research warns that if Greenland's ice sheet melted entirely, sea levels could rise by around 7 meters, 23 feet, affecting billions living near coastlines. Carbon dioxide levels today are 1.5 times higher than 400,000 years ago, and global temperatures are still rising. The study suggests that Greenland's ice sheet could be more sensitive to human-caused climate change than previously thought, making it vulnerable to rapid, irreversible melting in the coming centuries. The research involved analyzing a frozen sediment core collected in 1966 from beneath Greenland's ice sheet. Rediscovered in 2017, the core contained preserved plant material, indicating an ice-free environment around 416,000 years ago. This finding challenges the assumption that most of Greenland's ice sheet has been frozen for millions of years. The potential consequences are significant. Besides contributing to sea level rise, the loss of ice accelerates global warming as dark rock and vegetation replace reflective white ice, absorbing more sunlight. The study emphasizes the need for urgent action to mitigate climate change, as continued greenhouse gas emissions could rapidly destabilize the Greenland ice sheet, resulting in quick sea level rise. The researchers conclude that Greenland's ice sheet appears to be fragile and under imminent threat. Chapter 12. Coastal Desolation. The city stood at the edge of oblivion, a precarious balance between land and sea that was now being eroded by the relentless advance of rising waters. Tall seawalls and barriers had been erected as a last line of defense, but they were a fragile defense against the forces of nature that had been set into motion. The inhabitants of this coastal metropolis faced a daily battle against the encroaching tide. Emma gazed out at the waves that lapped against the seawall, her heart heavy with the weight of uncertainty. She remembered a time when the sea had been a place of leisure, a playground for families and friends. Now it was a constant threat, a reminder of the fragility of their existence. Her family had lived here for generations, but the land they had called home was slowly disappearing beneath the waves. The streets that were once bustling thoroughfares were now becoming canals, navigated by makeshift boats. Businesses that had thrived for decades were shuttering, unable to weather the constant inundation. The city's heartbeat had slowed, its rhythm disrupted by the tides that dictated the ebb and flow of life. Every high tide brought anxiety, every storm surge brought fear, and every inch of sea level rise brought a palpable sense of loss. For John, the decision to leave was a heart-wrenching one. His family had been fishers for generations, but the sea that had sustained them had turned into an adversary. As the waters encroached, the fish stocks dwindled, unable to adapt to the changing salinity and temperature. With no viable livelihood left, John and his family joined the exodus, leaving behind the only life they had known. The once thriving coastal community was fragmenting as its people sought refuge on higher ground. Anna, a climate scientist who had devoted her life to studying the oceans, now found herself in a race against time. She worked tirelessly to develop sustainable solutions that would give her city a fighting chance against the rising seas. The days were long, the challenges immense, but Anna refused to give in to despair. She believed in the power of human innovation, the ability to adapt and overcome even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. As the city's story unfolded, so did the tales of its people. Emma's family, John's journey, and Anna's unwavering determination painted a portrait of the human experience in the midst of environmental upheaval. Their lives intersected in a dance of struggle and resilience, illustrating the myriad ways that rising seas and climate-induced migration. Chapter 13. Water Scarcity and Agriculture. The parched earth told a story of desperation, a narrative written in the cracked soil, the withered crops, and the barren fields. Agriculture, the bedrock of human civilization, was facing an unprecedented crisis as heat waves and droughts converged to threaten food security for millions. As temperatures soared and rainfall patterns shifted, traditional agricultural practices were thrown into disarray. Crops that had once flourished now wilted under the relentless sun, their roots unable to penetrate the dry soil. The very essence of life, water, had become a scarce resource, and its scarcity was felt acutely in the fragile balance between sustenance and starvation. Heat waves, the harbingers of drought, struck with merciless force. The excessive temperatures accelerated evaporation rates, causing rivers and lakes to shrink, leaving fields bereft of irrigation water. The vicious cycle was a stark reminder that the delicate equilibrium that sustained agriculture was at the mercy of climatic whims. The Dust Bowl was no longer a relic of history. It was a recurring nightmare in a world that had grown warmer and drier. Regions that had long relied on consistent rainfall were now grappling with erratic patterns that defied prediction. The unpredictability posed a challenge to farmers who had cultivated their lands based on generations of accumulated wisdom. Crop failures became the norm, and the specter of hunger loomed large over communities that depended on agriculture for their survival. In regions already facing water scarcity, the consequences were dire. The parched fields were no longer green carpets of promise, they were landscapes of struggle. The Sahel, a vast belt of arid land in Africa, had become a battleground against desertification. Traditional pastoralists, who had herded livestock for generations, found their way of life threatened as grazing lands disappeared beneath shifting sands. In India, a country heavily reliant on agriculture, the monsoons that had nourished the land for centuries were now unreliable. Farmers faced the daunting task of adapting to new realities, from shifting to drought-resistant crops to exploring innovative irrigation techniques. The social and economic fabric of communities was strained as the foundational link between agriculture and livelihood grew fragile. These challenges were not confined to distant lands, they were global in nature. As crop yields faltered, food prices surged, and the domino effect rippled through economies and households. Food security, once taken for granted, was now a fragile thread that connected societies to stability and prosperity. The waters of the Great Lakes are dwindling. They contain about 1/5 of the world's fresh water supply. Communities around the lakes are experiencing the impact of the decreasing water levels, leading to changes in shoreline, erosion, and economic challenges. Climate change, driven by warming waters, is believed to be a major contributor to this trend, altering lake levels, ice cover, and evaporation patterns. The warming climate might lead to lower lake levels, permanently altering shorelines and impacting communities. The changing precipitation patterns, characterized by more intense spring storms, are leading to issues like toxic algae blooms and dead zones in the lakes. Despite a temporary increase in water levels due to cold winters, long-term preparation for lower lake levels is crucial. There is an emerging global economic threat posed by water scarcity, particularly affecting large Asian economies such as India and China. The scarcity of water is viewed as a crucial aspect of the broader climate crisis, with concerns raised about its impact on various sectors. Water scarcity in Asia, major Asian economies, specifically India and China, are particularly vulnerable to water shortages due to rapid industrialization and urbanization. These countries are experiencing significant growth, which demands substantial water resources for various sectors. Sectors affected. The sectors most affected by water shortages include agriculture, manufacturing, and the transition to renewable energy. Water scarcity is not limited to a single sector, but has far-reaching implications for the entire economy. Global freshwater demand. The global demand for fresh water is projected to exceed supply by 40% to 50% by 2030. The CEO of the Council on Energy, Environment, and Water, Arunabha Ghosh, emphasizes that water scarcity should be seen as a comprehensive economic issue rather than a limited problem. Impact on India. India, despite having 18% of the world's population, only possesses enough water resources for 4% of its people. Climate change has led to increased floods and droughts, exacerbating the water shortage in the country. China's situation. China faces similar challenges, with approximately 80% to 90% of its groundwater being unfit for consumption. Half of its aquifers are too polluted for industry and farming, and a significant portion of river water is not safe for drinking or agriculture. Water and energy. Water scarcity also affects energy generation, particularly for coal-based power plants. Without adequate water supply, power generation becomes ineffective, impacting economies heavily dependent on coal-based energy. Global impact. The water crisis is not limited to Asia. Europe is also expected to experience worsening water problems due to the deepening climate emergency. Rising temperatures and altered precipitation patterns impact river systems and water resources. Semiconductor industry. Sectors heavily reliant on water, such as Taiwan's semiconductor industry, are susceptible to supply interruptions due to water shortages. While many manufacturing industries can recycle water, pollution often hinders effective reuse. Energy transition. Water scarcity can hinder the transition to renewable energy sources. In China, droughts and heat waves have impacted hydroelectricity capabilities, leading to increased reliance on coal-fired plants to ensure energy security. Agriculture impact. Economies dependent on agriculture could witness significant drops in output, jeopardizing food security. Australia's agricultural production is expected to decline due to drier conditions and reduced crop yields. Chapter 14. 2171. The loss of the Great Lakes. In the years leading up to the decline of the Great Lakes, a young woman named Elena stood on the shores of Lake Michigan, captivated by its vastness and beauty. Born and raised in a lakeside town, she had grown up with the soothing rhythm of waves and the exhilarating call of seagulls. Her heart belonged to the waters that had shaped her life. As the subtle signs of change began to emerge, Elena's heartache deepened. The lakes she had known her whole life started to change before her eyes. Lake Michigan's water levels receded, leaving behind stretches of barren shoreline. The sight that had once brought her joy now filled her with a sense of loss and helplessness. With an unyielding spirit, Elena joined the efforts to understand the lake's plight. She enrolled in a research program that aimed to unravel the intricate factors behind the decline. Guided by passionate scientists and driven by her own determination, Elena embarked on a journey to comprehend the forces that were reshaping the heart of her world. Elena witnessed the lake's decline firsthand. Fishermen shared stories of dwindling catches, and communities grappled with water shortages. Ecosystems faltered, as the delicate balance she had known since childhood unraveled. Yet, even amidst despair, Elena clung to hope. She learned about the complex interplay of temperature, evaporation, and precipitation that was contributing to the lake's decline. She saw the lakes as a reflection of the world's interconnectedness, where the impacts of climate change transcended boundaries and affected even the mightiest of resources. Elena's journey led her to connect with others who shared her dedication. A global network of researchers, activists, and communities emerged, united by a common purpose to restore the Great Lakes to their former glory. Elena's heartache transformed into a fervent determination to save her beloved lakes. Inspired by Cleveland's success story, Elena and her allies championed desalination efforts along the lake's shores. They pioneered innovative solutions, channeling their collective expertise into systems that would replenish the lake's water levels. The spirit of collaboration that had defined their journey resonated with communities around the world, who recognized the shared responsibility to heal the planet. As the years passed, Elena and her colleagues witnessed the first signs of progress. Lake levels stabilized, ecosystems adapted, and communities learned to live in harmony with their transformed environment. Elena stood once again on the shores of Lake Michigan, tears streaming down her face as she saw the waters she loved begin to thrive anew. Elena's journey mirrored the lakes themselves. Once in decline, she emerged stronger and more determined. Her commitment, resilience, and unwavering hope turned her from a witness of tragedy into a beacon of transformation. As she looked out at the rejuvenated expanse of Lake Michigan, Elena knew that the power of collective action could turn the tides of adversity, restoring not only the lakes, but also the prom. Thirsty earth. Water, once taken for granted, had become a precious commodity, a luxury afforded only to the fortunate few. In a world where rivers had run dry and lakes had become mere memories, the struggle for survival had taken on a new dimension. The thirst for sustenance was matched only by the desperation to quench the unrelenting need for hydration. In a sun-scorched landscape, Maria trudged through the arid terrain, a water jug clutched in her hand like a lifeline. The journey to the distant well was a perilous one, a dance of endurance and hope against the unforgiving backdrop of the sun's relentless glare. Every step was a reminder that every drop of water mattered, that every sip was a delicate balance between life and death. Communities had formed around these oases of survival, where water sources were carefully rationed and guarded. Neighbors who once shared laughter and stories were now connected by a bond forged by necessity. Every drop of water was a communal treasure, a thread that wove their lives together in a tapestry of interdependence. In urban centers, the struggle for water was equally daunting. In a city that had once boasted fountains and flowing taps, residents now lined up at makeshift water distribution points. The clatter of plastic jugs filled the air, a cacophony that spoke of the desperation that had become routine. Clean water was no longer a given, it was a luxury that had to be fought for, a battle waged with patience and resilience. Children grew up with a different understanding of water, a resource to be cherished, not wasted. The once thriving rituals of bath time and water play were replaced with lessons of conservation and survival. A generation was growing up in the shadow of scarcity, their innocence tempered by the harsh realities of a world where every drop counted. And yet, even in this desolate world, pockets of hope emerged. Innovators found ways to purify and store water, developing techniques that pushed the boundaries of human ingenuity. Communities banded together to create systems that maximized the use of rainwater, turning every rooftop into a potential reservoir. These glimmers of resilience were a testament to the tenacity of the human spirit, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, innovation and collaboration could lead to solutions. Chapter 15: Extreme Weather Events. The world had become a stage for nature's fury, a theater where the backdrop of calm had been replaced by a symphony of chaos. Extreme weather events, once rare spectacles, were now a grim reality that communities across the globe had to face with increasing frequency and intensity. Hurricanes, cyclones, typhoons, and storms had shed their status as anomalies, transforming into harbingers of destruction that left no corner of the world untouched. The data was undeniable. The warming of the Earth's surface had breathed new life into these weather giants, fueling their growth and intensification. Warmer ocean waters provided the energy needed to fuel storms, transforming them into monsters with the potential to wreak havoc on coastlines and cities. Rising sea levels amplified the impact of storm surges, leading to catastrophic flooding that displaced communities and caused untold damage. The links between climate change and the increasing frequency of extreme weather events were complex but irrefutable. As greenhouse gas emissions continued to rise, the atmospheric conditions that spawned these events were becoming more favorable. The same greenhouse gases that warmed the planet also altered atmospheric circulation patterns, creating a breeding ground for storms with the potential for devastation. In the Atlantic basin, hurricanes had become a seasonal terror, their paths increasingly erratic and unpredictable. Communities that once enjoyed predictable hurricane seasons were now thrust into a roulette of uncertainty, never knowing when or where the next storm would strike. The hurricane seasons had become more intense, the winds more powerful, and the rainfall more torrential, leaving landscapes scarred and populations traumatized. In the Pacific region, typhoons roared to life with a ferocity that defied historical records. Entire islands were battered by relentless winds and rains, leaving behind landscapes of desolation. Coastal communities were repeatedly forced to rebuild in the aftermath of each typhoon, only to face the prospect of another onslaught in the following season. These extreme weather events were not isolated incidents. They were threads woven into the larger fabric of climate change. The interconnectedness of our planet's systems meant that the effects of a warming climate rippled through every facet of nature. The increasing frequency and intensity of these events were a testament to the urgent need for global action to curb emissions and mitigate their impact. The summer in the Northern Hemisphere is witnessing a series of extreme weather events, including heat waves, floods, and wildfires. Scientists warn that these events may be just a preview of more chaotic situations if greenhouse gas emissions continue. Numerous records for extreme weather have been broken in a short period of time, such as prolonged heat waves in the South and Southwest United States, extreme heat waves in Southern Europe causing wildfires, and soaring temperatures in Asia leading to deadly flooding. Petteri Talas, the Secretary General of the World Meteorological Organization, referred to this sequence of extreme weather events as the new normal. However, some scientists contest this idea, stating that until greenhouse gas emissions are significantly reduced, it's impossible to predict the future climate with certainty. Hannah Cloak and other scientists argue that the concept of a new normal overlooks the continuing impact of human-caused climate change. Michael E. Mann prefers the term the new abnormal to emphasize that the impacts of climate change are worsening over time. He explains that as long as global temperatures rise due to continued fossil fuel burning, the impacts will escalate. Climate models predicted some of the extreme weather seen this year, given the influence of El Niño on top of long-term global warming caused by human activities. Climate change is causing unexpected anomalies, like record-low winter sea ice levels in Antarctica and unprecedented heat in the North Atlantic. Changes in the jet stream, driven by the warming Arctic, contribute to prolonged weather patterns, leading to recurring heat waves or heavy rainfall in specific regions. Scientists warn that countries will struggle to adapt to these new extremes, and combinations of events can lead to unexpected impacts on society, agriculture, and ecosystems. The article emphasizes that while some climate impacts are inevitable due to past emissions, there's still time to mitigate the worst consequences by reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The latest scientific evidence indicates that global temperature rise would stop shortly after the cessation of fossil fuel burning. Every fraction of a degree of temperature rise matters, and immediate action is crucial to shaping a better future. The UN issued 3 reports revealing a grim future due to inadequate global efforts to combat climate change. These reports paint a picture of rising greenhouse gas emissions, extreme warming, and worsening climate disasters. The UN Environment Programme's Emissions Gap report states that there's no credible pathway to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial times. The world is heading towards 2.8 degrees of global heating by the end of the century, leading to a global catastrophe. The UN Framework Convention on Climate Change's report indicates that greenhouse gas emissions are projected to increase by 10.6% by 2030 compared to 2010 levels. Even if all countries meet their commitments under the Paris Climate Agreement, temperatures could rise by around 2.5 degrees Celsius by 2100. The UN's World Meteorological Organization's report shows that carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide reached record highs in 2021. Carbon dioxide saw a larger increase than the average annual growth rate of the past decade, contributing significantly to greenhouse gas warming effects. The urgency of reducing fossil fuel burning is highlighted, with methane emissions requiring immediate attention due to its short atmospheric lifetime. Experts stress that carbon dioxide emissions must be drastically cut to prevent long-term climate impacts. Climate researchers from Oregon State University emphasize that humanity is facing a climate emergency with escalating climate-related disasters causing immense suffering. They warned that temperatures not experienced in millions of years could become a reality. The world is on the brink of a major climate crisis and catastrophe. Humanity's future depends on collective action and innovative solutions to address climate change. In essence, the UN reports portray a dire situation where the lack of substantial action to combat climate change could lead to catastrophic consequences for the planet and humanity. Chapter 16. Battling the Elements. The storm had left a trail of destruction in its wake. Buildings reduced to rubble, trees uprooted like matchsticks, and streets transformed into rivers. But amidst the chaos, a sense of unity had emerged, a determination to rise above the devastation and rebuild. In a world where extreme weather events were the new normal, communities were learning to band together and battle the elements that threatened their very existence. In a coastal town, a group of residents rallied to rebuild their homes after a devastating hurricane had ripped through. With determination etched on their faces, they cleared debris and salvaged whatever they could. Strangers became friends as they shared resources and offered a helping hand to those in need. The storm had shattered their lives, but it had also revealed the strength of their human bonds. In a small farming village, a community had learned to adapt their practices to the changing climate. After a series of intense storms had decimated their crops, they turned to innovative methods that could withstand the elements. Greenhouses were fortified, rainwater harvesting systems were improved, and seed varieties that were more resilient to extreme weather were cultivated. As they worked the land, they knew that their survival depended on their ability to adapt and cooperate. In a city that had weathered countless storms, a network of volunteers had formed a rapid response team. Trained in disaster relief, they mobilized at a moment's notice, providing aid and support to those affected by extreme weather events. Their efforts went beyond immediate relief. They worked tirelessly to strengthen community resilience, offering training on emergency preparedness and building structures that could withstand the fury of the elements. These stories of resilience and cooperation were repeated in communities across the world. The challenges were immense, and the scars of the storms ran deep, but humanity's response was a testament to its tenacity and capacity for empathy. The storms had become a catalyst for change, inspiring people to forge stronger bonds and reimagine their relationship with the environment. In the face of adversity, humanity was realizing that the battle against the elements was not one to be fought alone. Communities were learning that unity and collaboration were their most powerful tools. As they navigated the complexities of a world shaped by climate change, they were finding hope in the collective spirit that emerged in the aftermath of disaster. Chapter 17. Health and Societal Impact. As the planet's climate continued to evolve, the impacts rippled through the interconnected web of human societies and well-being. The consequences of a warming world were not limited to the physical environment. They had profound implications for human health and the fabric of societies. Prolonged exposure to extreme heat was exacting a toll on health, particularly in regions unaccustomed to such conditions. Heat waves were more than discomfort. They were life-threatening events that strained the body's ability to regulate temperature. Heat-related illnesses such as heat exhaustion and heat stroke became more common, taxing healthcare systems and resources. The impact of heat wasn't limited to physical ailments. Mental health was also affected, as the stress of living in conditions of constant discomfort took its toll. The emotional toll of witnessing the destruction of homes, communities, and even ways of life due to climate-related events was a weight that affected individuals and communities alike. Air quality was another casualty of climate change. As temperatures rose, so did the prevalence of ground-level ozone and other pollutants, particularly in urban areas. These pollutants aggravated respiratory conditions and led to increased hospital admissions for respiratory distress. Vulnerable populations, including the elderly, children, and those with pre-existing health conditions, were disproportionately affected. The impacts of a changing climate were not distributed equally across societies. Vulnerable communities faced a greater burden, often due to factors beyond their control. Socioeconomic disparities compounded the effects of climate-related health impacts. Lower-income individuals were more likely to live in areas with poor air quality and limited access to healthcare resources. Communities in developing countries were often hit the hardest. Lack of access to clean water and sanitation, coupled with inadequate infrastructure, left them particularly vulnerable to the health impacts of climate change. Extreme weather events displaced populations, leading to overcrowding in makeshift shelters and increased risk of disease transmission. The interconnectedness of health, environment, and society highlighted the need for comprehensive strategies to mitigate these impacts. Efforts to address climate change could not exist in isolation from public health measures and social equity considerations. The solutions required a multidisciplinary approach that accounted for the complex interplay between environmental changes and their human consequences. Following a disaster, most individuals will eventually recover, but many will initially experience distressing thoughts, emotions, and physical symptoms. These reactions might lead to psychiatric disorders like depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Chapter 18. Fragile Lives. In the midst of a world shaken by climate crises, the lives of individuals were woven together by threads of resilience and fragility. Each person faced a unique journey through a landscape of changing health dynamics and societal upheaval, where the consequences of a warming planet were no longer distant abstractions, but daily realities to be navigated. Elena, a young mother, gazed out the window at the hazy horizon. The air, thick with pollutants, made each breath a laborious task. Her daughter's asthma had worsened as the air quality deteriorated, leading to sleepless nights and constant worry. The family had to remain indoors on days when the air was particularly hazardous, leaving them isolated from the world outside. Across the city, Alan sat in his makeshift office, poring over stacks of paperwork. His job in disaster relief had taken on new dimensions as extreme weather events became more frequent. He saw firsthand the devastation that followed in the wake of storms, and his heart ached for the communities that were uprooted time and again. The emotional toll of his work weighed heavily on him as he grappled with the enormity of the challenges they faced. In a coastal village, Amina balanced her daily routine of fetching water with caring for her elderly parents. Water scarcity had become a way of life, and the family's days revolved around rationing their limited supply. Amina's mother had fallen ill due to the lack of clean water, and her father's weakened immune system made him susceptible to infections. The village that had once thrived now clung to survival amidst uncertainty. As the climate crises intensified, mental health became an urgent concern. Anxiety and depression were on the rise as individuals grappled with the emotional weight of living in a world that seemed to be unraveling. Therapists and counselors were in high demand, providing support to those struggling to cope with the overwhelming challenges of a changing planet. Despite the struggles, moments of resilience emerged. Communities came together to support one another, forming networks of care and assistance. Grassroots initiatives focused on mental health and well-being gained momentum, offering spaces for people to share their stories and find solace in collective understanding. Chapter 19. Technological Challenges. Amidst the challenges of a changing climate, the allure of technological solutions had captured the collective imagination. Innovations such as carbon capture, renewable energy sources, and geoengineering promised a glimmer of hope in a world threatened by the consequences of unchecked carbon emissions. Yet, these technological endeavors also brought forth a complex array of challenges and limitations that demanded a careful consideration of their role in shaping a more sustainable future. Carbon capture, often hailed as a potential silver bullet, aimed to capture carbon dioxide emissions from industrial processes and power plants before they entered the atmosphere. The captured CO2 could then be stored underground or put to use in other applications. While the concept held promise, the implementation faced hurdles. The scale required for meaningful impact was immense, and the economic viability was uncertain. Moreover, the process of capturing and storing carbon posed its own environmental risks and concerns. Renewable energy sources like solar, wind, and hydroelectric power were lauded as alternatives to fossil fuels, offering a cleaner path to energy generation. However, these sources were not without their challenges. The intermittency of wind and solar energy required sophisticated energy storage solutions to bridge the gaps in supply. The transition from fossil fuels to renewables also necessitated substantial infrastructural changes and posed economic considerations for regions heavily reliant on traditional energy industries. Geoengineering proposals aimed to directly manipulate the Earth's climate system to counteract the effects of global warming. While they held potential to rapidly reduce global temperatures, these solutions were highly controversial due to their unpredictable consequences. For example, solar radiation management techniques involved reflecting sunlight away from the Earth, but the long-term environmental and social implications were not well understood. The pursuit of technological solutions also raised ethical and equity concerns. Developing countries, often the most vulnerable to climate impacts, faced barriers in adopting advanced technologies due to factors such as limited resources and infrastructure. The technological divide between nations highlighted the importance of ensuring that solutions were accessible and equitable, rather than exacerbating existing inequalities. The interconnectedness of technological solutions with policy, economics, and social systems underscored the complexity of the challenge. There was no one-size-fits-all solution, and a comprehensive approach required the integration of science, policy, and stakeholder collaboration. Sunlight is a crucial factor for human survival, as it aids in plant growth and vitamin production. While living underground would limit exposure to natural sunlight, alternatives like LED lamps that emit UV wavelengths could simulate the required light for both humans and crops. Underground farms using hydroponics and artificial lighting already exist, ensuring a source of nutrient-rich food. To address the need for vitamin D, which is typically obtained from sunlight, underground inhabitants could rely on vitamin D-rich foods and supplements. Additionally, light therapy could help regulate circadian rhythms and mitigate psychological impacts, such as seasonal affective disorder, SAD, that might arise due to reduced exposure to natural light. Psychological challenges associated with underground living are also discussed. Lawrence Palinkas, an expert in extreme environments, suggests that screening individuals with certain traits and promoting teamwork could help people adapt to underground living. Design considerations, such as incorporating green spaces and natural elements, might contribute to maintaining psychological well-being. Successful underground living requires more than just digging a hole. It involves addressing a range of physiological, psychological, and practical challenges. In the Shadow of Progress. Chapter 20. In the year 2171, humanity had been forced to abandon the surface of the Earth due to the scorching temperatures caused by unrelenting global warming. The heat was so intense that being above ground for more than a few hours meant certain death. The sky, once a beautiful expanse of blue, had become an unbearable furnace that no one dared to face. Life had shifted deep below the surface, where sprawling underground cities had taken root. Massive tunnels connected the different communities, and life had adapted to the new reality. People lived in a labyrinth of interconnected chambers, relying on technology, innovation, and determination to survive. Among these subterranean societies was the city of Arcadia. It was a marvel of engineering, with towering underground skyscrapers and artificial ecosystems that replicated the natural world as closely as possible. The city was designed to minimize the psychological impact of living without sunlight, with simulated daylight panels and bioluminescent plants that provided a sense of normalcy. Elena had spent her entire life in Arcadia. Born underground, she had never felt the warmth of the sun on her skin or seen the vastness of the sky. She had only heard stories from the elders about the days when people lived above ground without fear. One day, while exploring a forgotten chamber deep within the city, Elena stumbled upon a hidden room filled with ancient artifacts. Among the relics was an old book with pages that were brittle and yellowed. It contained stories of a world that was once vibrant and alive, a world where people breathed fresh air and basked in sunlight. Elena's curiosity was piqued, and she began to read the book. As she flipped through the pages, she discovered descriptions of the sky, the oceans, and the feeling of warmth on one's face. The book spoke of a time when people could roam freely, unburdened by the constraints of an underground existence. Overwhelmed by a desire to experience the world beyond the shadows, Elena shared the book with her friends and family. Together, they formed a small group determined to find a way to venture above ground, even if it meant defying the dire warnings and risks. They called themselves the Sunseekers and began to research ways to survive the harsh conditions above. They studied the accounts of ancient survival techniques, learning about the potential benefits of UV lamps and vitamin-rich foods. They experimented with creating small gardens and artificial sunlight panels, all the while dreaming of the day they could breathe fresh air and feel the warmth of the sun. As they prepared for their journey, the Sunseekers faced skepticism and opposition from many who believed that the surface was an inhospitable wasteland. But the group's determination and their hope for a better life kept them going. They gathered supplies, developed new technologies, and trained rigorously to withstand the extreme heat. Finally, the day of their ascent arrived. Elena and her fellow Sunseekers donned special suits designed to protect them from the intense heat and ventured upwards. As they emerged into the blinding light, their hearts raced with a mixture of fear and excitement. The sun's rays were intense, but they felt a sense of exhilaration they had never known before. For the first time in centuries, they saw the vast expanse of the sky above and felt a connection to the world that had been lost for so long. The ground was barren and the air was scorching, but the Sunseekers were undeterred. They planted seeds, erected UV lamps, and set up shelters to create a sanctuary where life could flourish once again. Their efforts were met with challenges and setbacks, but they persisted. Slowly, vegetation began to sprout, and animals returned to the once desolate landscape. The Sunseekers' determination and ingenuity had triumphed over adversity, proving that humanity's spirit could not be extinguished. As more and more people joined them on the surface, a new way of life began to emerge. It was a life filled with hope, resilience, and the shared dream of restoring Earth to its former glory. The underground cities remained, a testament to the adaptability of humanity, but now they coexisted with a reinvigorated surface world, where the sun shone brightly once again. Chapter 21. The Urgency of Action. The evidence was irrefutable, the data undeniable. The world stood at a critical juncture, facing a climate crisis of unprecedented magnitude. The urgency of action reverberated through the scientific community, policymakers, and concerned citizens alike. The time to act was not a distant horizon, it was now. The planet's average temperature had risen, glaciers were receding, sea levels were climbing, and extreme weather events were intensifying. The signs of a changing climate were unmistakable, and the consequences were becoming increasingly dire. The urgency stemmed from the realization that every delay in addressing these issues carried profound implications for future generations and the stability of ecosystems that underpinned life on Earth. Policy recommendations and international efforts to combat climate change had gained momentum. The Paris Agreement, a landmark global accord, aimed to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Nationally determined contributions, NDCs, outlined each country's commitments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. However, the gap between current commitments and the action required remains substantial, demanding a collective redoubling of efforts. Transitioning to a low-carbon economy was central to these efforts. The adoption of renewable energy sources, the enhancement of energy efficiency, and the reduction of emissions across sectors were critical steps in reducing the human footprint on the environment. Carbon pricing mechanisms, which assigned a cost to carbon emissions, aim to incentivize industries and individuals to make more sustainable choices. International cooperation was paramount, as climate change was a global challenge that transcended borders. Collaboration on research, sharing of best practices, and financial support for developing nations were integral components of addressing the crisis. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, provided scientific assessments and recommendations that guided policy decisions, emphasizing the urgency of reducing emissions to avoid irreversible damage. The urgency of action also extended to communities, businesses, and individuals. Local initiatives, grassroots movements, and corporate commitments to sustainability were driving change from the ground up. The collective power of informed consumer choices, advocacy, and education was a force that could not be underestimated. Researchers found that the Sahara Desert was once a fertile land with flowing rivers between 16,800 and 7,500 years ago. However, the region experienced significant warming, raising temperatures by about 44 degrees Fahrenheit. This warming caused excessive flooding and quadrupled rainfall, transforming the once lush region into a hazardous area that forced inhabitants to flee. Chapter 22. Hope Amidst Desolation. In the midst of uncertainty and upheaval, a glimmer of hope emerged. The world had come to realize that the challenges posed by climate change required a unified response, a response that transcended borders, politics, and differences. In a future where the consequences of inaction had become all too clear, humanity found itself on a path of collective action and shared purpose. The city buzzed with activity, not of despair, but of determination. Solar panels adorned rooftops, wind turbines gracefully spun in the breeze, and electric vehicles silently navigated the streets. Green spaces had reclaimed what concrete had once claimed, offering a respite from the urban bustle. The skyline, once marred by pollution, now stood as a testament to a city that had harnessed the power of technology and collective will to combat climate change. Around the world, nations had united to implement bold policies and transformative initiatives. Carbon emissions were on a downward trajectory, and efforts to restore ecosystems and protect biodiversity were yielding results. Reforestation projects had taken root, breathing life back into landscapes that had been scarred by deforestation. Conservation efforts had saved species from the brink of extinction, offering a glimpse of the interconnectedness of all life forms on Earth. Communities that had once borne the brunt of climate impacts had become centers of innovation and resilience. Local initiatives focused on sustainable agriculture, water management, and disaster preparedness had empowered individuals to take charge of their future. The lessons of adaptation and cooperation had spread like wildfire, igniting a movement that transcended boundaries. The power of collective action was evident in every corner of society. Governments, businesses, civil society, and individuals had aligned their efforts toward a common goal, a future where the legacy of a changing climate was one of adaptation, innovation, and unity. The challenges had not disappeared, but they had become stepping stones on a path toward progress. As the stories of individuals unfolded against this backdrop of hope, a new narrative emerged. It was a narrative of resilience, of individuals discovering their capacity to make a difference, and of communities rising above adversity. The triumphs were as much about technological advancements as they were about the power of the human spirit to change course. Chapter 23. Shadows of the Past. In the dimly lit underground city of Nova Terra, the remnants of humanity had found refuge from the unrelenting wrath of the sun. The surface had become a wasteland of blistering heat and scorching winds, a place where life had become unsustainable. But deep beneath the surface, a network of tunnels and chambers had become home to those who had survived the Earth's transformation. Life in the subterranean city was a delicate balance of survival and adaptation. Controlled environments maintained a semblance of normalcy, providing breathable air and regulated temperatures that offered respite from the merciless sun. Vertical farms bathed in artificial light grew crops, while intricate water filtration systems provided a precious resource that had become scarcer than ever. Within the labyrinthine corridors, people moved with a sense of purpose, each individual a thread in the tapestry of survival. Families gathered in communal spaces, sharing meals and stories of a world that existed only in memories. The once vivid images of green landscapes, blue skies, and bustling cities had become fragments of the past, painted with the melancholy of nostalgia. Elena sat by the holographic projection of a park, a simulation of the outdoor spaces that were now only a dream. She recalled the feel of grass beneath her feet, the scent of flowers carried on the breeze, and the warmth of the sun against her skin. These sensations had become abstract concepts, fragments of a reality that had slipped away. In another corner of Nova Terra, Alan stood before a display of historical artifacts salvaged from the surface. Faded photographs, cracked soil samples, and weathered books told the story of a world that had been reshaped by climate change. He traced his fingers over the images, feeling a connection to a past he had never witnessed, but that he felt a responsibility to honor. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into years, the underground city's inhabitants clung to the memories of a world they had lost. The faces of loved ones, the taste of fresh rain, the sound of waves crashing on the shore, these were the fragments that fueled their determination to persevere. And yet, amidst the shadows of the past, there was a whisper of hope. The shared stories of a world before had become a catalyst for change. People banded together to innovate, to imagine a future where the surface could once again sustain life. The lessons of the past were a reminder that humanity's actions carried consequences, and the path forward required a commitment to stewardship and unity. Chapter 24. The Expanding Sun. In the vast expanse of space, the sun, the life-giving star at the heart of our solar system, was undergoing a profound transformation. The sun, like all stars, had a life cycle that spanned billions of years. As it progressed through its stages, its behavior and characteristics would change, with far-reaching consequences for the planets and systems that orbited it. The sun had spent the majority of its existence in a phase known as the main sequence, where nuclear fusion reactions in its core converted hydrogen into helium, releasing energy in the form of light and heat. But as the sun's hydrogen fuel was gradually exhausted, its core contracted and heated, causing the outer layers to expand. This expansion marked the beginning of the sun's journey toward becoming a red giant, a phase that would have profound implications for Earth and its inhabitants. As the sun's outer layers expanded, its size would increase dramatically, enveloping the inner planets, including Earth, in its scorching embrace. The sun's growing size and intensity would contribute to the escalating climate crisis on Earth. The increased energy output would cause the planet's surface temperatures to rise even further, compounding the already dire conditions that had forced humanity underground. The relentless heat and radiation from the sun would create an inhospitable environment, rendering the surface uninhabitable. This transformation marked the inevitable fate of our solar system. As the sun continued to evolve into a red giant, its outer layers would eventually be expelled into space, creating a beautiful, yet fleeting, shell known as a planetary nebula. What remained of the sun's core would shrink and cool, becoming a white dwarf, a dense remnant of a once mighty star. As the sun's life cycle unfolded, it served as a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of celestial events and the delicate balance that governed our universe. The expanding sun was not an isolated phenomenon. It was part of the intricate dance of cosmic forces that shaped the destiny of worlds. Astronomers have observed what could be Earth's future fate in about 5 billion years when the sun reaches the end of its life and engulfs the inner planets of the solar system, including Earth. This discovery comes from the first-time observation of a sun-like star consuming an orbiting planet. The star, located about 15,000 light-years away, underwent a sudden and brief brightening, becoming about 100 times more luminous over 10 days. Follow-up observations suggest that the star ingested a hot gas giant planet similar in size to Jupiter. The study provides insights into the final fate of Earth as the sun reaches the end of its life. The star's expansion caused its outer atmosphere to come into contact with the orbiting planet, resulting in the expulsion of gas and the formation of dust. This process eventually led to the planet plunging into the star, causing a temporary increase in brightness. While Earth's eventual fate may be similar, the researchers note that Earth is much smaller, and its engulfment would generate less light and be a minor event for the aging sun. The researchers also suggest that Earth will become inhospitable due to the sun's increasing heat output long before the engulfment occurs. This observation sheds light on a process that theorists have long predicted but have never seen in action. The discovery is expected to lead to a better understanding of the dynamics between stars and planets during the late stages of a star's evolution. The sun's eventual destruction of Earth might come sooner than expected due to the sun's increasing brightness over time. As the sun burns hydrogen into helium in its core, it gets brighter and expels more energy. This increase in brightness, even by 10% over a billion years, could have catastrophic effects on Earth. The rising heat would cause more water to evaporate from the surface, creating a greenhouse effect that traps heat and accelerates evaporation. Eventually, the sun's high-energy light could split molecules in Earth's atmosphere, leading to the loss of water. Over the next 3.5 billion years, the sun's increasing brightness could boil Earth's oceans, melt ice caps, and strip its atmosphere of moisture, leaving the planet hot, dry, and barren like Venus. Furthermore, in about 4 to 5 billion years, the sun will exhaust its hydrogen fuel and transition to burning helium. As it expands into a red giant, Earth's fate will be to either be consumed by the sun's outer layers or to escape its gravitational pull. Even if Earth manages to escape, it will still be subject to intense temperatures, making life unsustainable. The sun will eventually shrink to become a white dwarf, surrounded by a planetary nebula, and cool down over time. Despite these predictions, other scenarios such as asteroid impacts or nuclear apocalypse could threaten Earth before the sun's eventual destruction. The notion that the stars we see in the night sky are already dead is incorrect. While it is true that the light from stars takes time to reach us, even the most distant stars visible to the naked eye are within 10 millennia of Earth. Stars have much longer lifespans than this. Even the most luminous stars can live for over 1 million years. Only in very rare cases, such as the star Eta Carinae, which is on the brink of exploding, could a star have died while its light is still reaching Earth. The majority of stars are still alive and shining in the sky. Even the idea that stars in other galaxies might be already dead doesn't hold up, as it takes powerful telescopes to see individual stars in distant galaxies, and the odds are against most of those stars being dead. The Dying Sun, a spectacular finale. As our cosmic clock ticks away, the sun, that radiant life-giver that has sustained our world for 4.6 billion years, approaches its inevitable end. Just as the cycle of birth, growth, and decline is woven into the tapestry of existence, the sun, too, has its own narrative of twilight and transformation. In a grand performance spanning billions of years, our star will journey through remarkable phases, each unveiling a different facet of its celestial personality. Join us as we delve into the 14 awe-inspiring chapters of the sun's final symphony. 1. The timeline of a stellar journey. Stars, those luminous giants of the cosmic stage, each have their own narrative to tell. Our sun, at 4.6 billion years old, is halfway through its existence. But, like all things in the universe, it too has an expiration date, drawing its curtain after another 5 billion years. Its current phase, the main sequence, is like its vibrant youth, and once it transforms around 12% of its hydrogen into helium, a new chapter of its life begins. 2. The fading glow. A star's last act is like a graceful bow, a gradual dimming of its brilliance. As nuclear fuel dwindles, the star's light starts to wane. The cessation of heat production, coupled with radiation pressure's ebb, nudges the star into a slow contraction, as if it's gently folding into itself. 3. The gravity of aging. The sun's journey into twilight follows a unique path. As its fusion process wanes, gravity steps forward to lead the way. The material inside the star's core, once a fiery furnace, begins to compress, creating an inward pressure. 4. From radiance to red giant. As the sun's light fades, its destiny unfolds. In a stunning metamorphosis, it inflates into a red giant star. Its outer layers expand and peel away, creating a cosmic spectacle that stretches its diameter, resembling Earth's orbital distance. 5. A cosmic embrace. In its red giant phase, the sun will extend its embrace, potentially engulfing Mercury, Venus, and Earth, or at least nudging them outward. The sun's grandeur will reach 150 times its present size, a moment of profound transformation. 6. A final burst of light. The dying star, though fading, has a final burst of brilliance left. Shells of hydrogen and helium ignite through the force of gravity, flaring up, albeit briefly. The sun will shine 2,100 times brighter than we know it, a farewell performance of radiance. 7. The birth of the white dwarf. Some 7 or 8 billion years into the future, the sun will embark on a breathtaking transformation. Its vibrant life culminates in becoming a white dwarf star, a dense, cool remnant, marking the end of its fiery dance. 8. A galactic light show. The pinnacle of the sun's finale arrives as it transforms into a planetary nebula. Shells of luminous gas expand outward, painting the cosmos with a fluorescent display that will mesmerize for 50,000 years. 9. Carbon's legacy. In its twilight, carbon emerges as a key player. The sun's atmosphere enriches with carbon, but rather than igniting in fusion, the core ignites in helium burning, expelling outer layers to form celestial belches. 10. A burst of farewell. The final act begins with a helium flash, propelling dust and gas outward. The planetary nebula's intricate architecture emerges as high-speed material meets older shells, crafting its unique form. 11. Illuminating the void. The planetary nebula evolves, with the white dwarf igniting the surrounding gas. The gas, ionized by ultraviolet photons, emits a fluorescent glow, creating a luminous spectacle across the cosmic canvas. 12. Shaping the nebula. Intense winds from the stripped star intertwine with the surrounding gases, sculpting the planetary nebula into various shapes. A cosmic interplay of energies crafts spheres, ovals, and intricate forms. 13. The illusion of emptiness. The cosmic ballet gives rise to intricate structures, with superwinds and fast winds forming boundaries. What seems hollow is an illusion. The shock front showcases the edges of the nebula, as the interplay between winds carves its enchanting design. 14. A glimmer of remembrance. As magnetic fields shape the nebula's final flourish, a quiet transformation takes place. The once mighty solar system yields to a white dwarf remnant star, its legacy echoing in the endless cosmos, a testament to the ebb and flow of the universe's eternal rhythm. As we ponder the sun's celestial finale, we're reminded of the intricate dance of existence, where even the grandest stars must bow to the inevitability of change. In these final chapters of its cosmic saga, the sun unveils a breathtaking display of beauty and transformation, a reminder that in the vast cosmic theater, all things must ultimately return to stardust. Chapter 25: Last Hopes and Farewells. As the sun's fiery embrace drew closer, the underground city of Nova Terra found itself teetering on the edge of despair. The once controlled environments now struggled to maintain habitable conditions as the sun's intensity seeped through the layers of rock and earth. The sense of urgency was palpable, a reminder that time was a luxury no longer afforded. Scientists and leaders worked around the clock in makeshift labs, poring over data and calculations in search of a solution, a way to shield the underground city from the impending onslaught of heat and radiation. They wrestled with the impossible task of altering the course of cosmic events, their determination fueled by the knowledge that their efforts might be humanity's last chance. Elena, now a renowned climatologist, stood before a holographic display of the Earth's surface. The simulations painted a grim picture, a world ablaze with scorching temperatures and churning oceans. She had devoted her life to understanding the intricacies of the climate, but now her expertise was being pushed to its limits in a desperate attempt to find a path forward. Alan, now a leader in the community, addressed a gathering of people in the underground square. His voice carried a mix of resolve and vulnerability as he spoke of the challenges they faced and the unity required to confront them. He knew that their efforts might not succeed, but he also knew that in the face of annihilation, hope was a currency worth spending. As the days passed, the impending end cast a poignant shadow over the city. People embraced, shared stories, and found solace in each other's presence. Farewells were spoken with a weight that transcended words, a recognition that the world they had known was slipping away, and the time for goodbyes had come. In the final hours, as the sun's flames licked at the edges of the earth, the people of Nova Terra gathered in a cavernous chamber. The holographic display above them showed the fiery surface above, a reflection of the imminent end. Tears mingled with whispered farewells as loved ones clung to each other, a testament to the human spirit's capacity to find comfort in companionship, even in the face of oblivion. As the world outside grew brighter, the people of Nova Terra held on to each other, their hearts intertwined in a shared moment of unity. The sun's rays grew hotter, the heat more intense, until the very ground itself seemed to tremble. And then, in an instant, the light faded, and the earth was consumed by a searing inferno. Chapter 26: The Final Days. In the waning moments of Earth's existence, the relentless expansion of the sun cast a shadow of inevitability over the planet. The once vibrant world had succumbed to a scorching inferno as temperatures soared and the atmosphere itself was stripped away by the sun's intense radiation. The final chapter of Earth's story was a testament to the profound forces that shaped the destiny of celestial bodies. The sun's transformation into a red giant had far-reaching consequences for Earth's environment. As the sun's outer layers expanded, they released a torrent of energy that bombarded the planet with intense heat and radiation. The surface temperatures soared to levels that were untenable for life, leaving behind an uninhabitable wasteland. In these final days, the Earth's atmosphere had all but dissipated, stripped away by the sun's fierce solar wind. The sky, once a canvas of blue, had faded to a pale glow as gases and molecules were scattered into space. The absence of an atmosphere meant that protection from the sun's lethal radiation was no more, leaving the surface exposed to the full force of cosmic elements. The Earth's ultimate destruction was a complex process driven by the sun's gravitational forces and the overwhelming energy it emitted. As the sun's outer layers continued to expand, they would eventually engulf the remnants of the inner planets, including Earth. The planet's solid surface would be obliterated, its molecules dissociated, and its matter dispersed into the cosmos. The somber reality of Earth's fate served as a poignant reminder of the interconnectedness of celestial phenomena and the transient nature of existence. It underscored the delicate balance that governed the cosmos and the profound influence of stars on the planets that orbited them. Amidst the stark reality, there were lessons to be gleaned. The story of Earth's demise was not one of fatalism, but of urgency. It was a reminder of the importance of taking meaningful action to address the climate crisis, to safeguard the delicate ecosystems that sustained life, and to preserve the beauty and wonder of our planet for future generations. As humanity faced the end, a reflection on the fragility of existence and the magnitude of responsibility carried forward became paramount. The narrative of Earth's final days served as a call to action, a plea to recognize the power of collective effort in shaping the destiny of worlds. And as the final chapter drew to a close, the interplay between science and imagination had woven a tapestry of exploration and introspection, inviting readers to contemplate the profound interrelationship between humanity and the cosmos. The journey through science and fiction had illuminated the urgency of responsible stewardship and the potential for transformation, leaving behind a legacy of reflection and hope for a world that stood at the crossroads of possibility. Astronomers find themselves in a state of uncertainty as they attempt to unveil the exact composition of the universe. This uncertainty extends to the elemental makeup of stars, including our own sun. While researchers understand the basics of the sun's chemical composition, the precise quantities of elements like carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen remain elusive. These quantities are critical as they influence how stars live and die, the formation of planets, and even the potential for life on other worlds. Traditionally, the sun's chemical composition served as a reference point for determining the abundance of elements in other stars, galaxies, and cosmic gas clouds. Yet, recent research by astrophysicist Martin Asplund and his colleagues challenged long-held assumptions. Their models, based on analyzing sunlight, indicated significantly lower levels of key heavy elements in the sun, including carbon and oxygen, compared to previous calculations. The debate has widespread implications, affecting our understanding of the sun's interior and its vibrational patterns. These vibrations have been crucial in deducing the sun's structure, including the boundary between its radiative interior and convective envelope. Asplund's models have raised questions about whether this boundary's position contradicts the new solar abundance estimates. Resolving the debate has become a scientific priority. Efforts include experiments to measure element opacities at high temperatures similar to those within the sun. The ongoing study of neutrinos emitted from the sun's core during nuclear reactions also holds promise for estimating elemental abundances. These neutrinos, generated in processes involving carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen, might offer a new perspective on the sun's composition. Despite the uncertainty and debate, astronomers remain optimistic about finding a resolution. As research continues and new data emerges, the quest to determine the exact composition of stars, particularly our sun, reflects the ongoing pursuit of understanding the intricate complexities of the cosmos. The end. About the author. Trent Holloway has spent his career tracking the fault lines of the future. Not a scientist, not a doctor, just a relentless researcher who connects the dots before most people even see the pattern. With a background in investigative journalism and a deep dive into climate data, Holloway has built a reputation for uncovering the uncomfortable truths about where the world is headed. His books aren't about speculation, they're about the hard science of what's coming next. From climate disasters to existential threats, Holloway digs into the numbers, the trends, and the history we've ignored for too long. His mission? To make sure we see the warning signs before it's too late. Copyright Trent Holloway 2025.